Thanks for joining me for another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And my next guest, Kenny Hyde, is a fitness trainer extraordinaire. He has the mental battle of it all down so well and will give you so many incredible tips that you don't want to miss this one. Share it with your friends, your family, leave a comment, and we'll be happy to talk back to you. Thanks so much. So, Kenny, thank you so much for being on Think Your Way to an Epic Life.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kara. And I love what your message is to the world. And I totally vibe with it. I think that's a great thing for people to keep in mind. And I know that's why I'm here. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't thought my way to a fairly epic life myself. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Think Your Way to an Epic Life a lot of it came from Think and Grow Rich, because it really does start. And no, I'm not saying that you can sit here and go, and have the perfect body or the perfect bank account. It doesn't work that way. You literally have to do stuff, but it all starts with what you're thinking that allows you to. So give me a clue on how you have thought your way to an epic life.
Mentors. You speak about Think and Grow Rich. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Proctor at all, the silver-haired guy out of Canada. He was my coach. That was my first program that I invested in to start my career. And so I would say good coaching for sure.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. That is super cool. Benjamin Franklin said, empty the coins of your purse into your mind.
Love that.
He's a pretty smart dude. A pretty smart dude. So tell me a little bit about it. You got to a point and you just decided no more. Tell me what led up to your transformation.
It's a good question. So I think it all started when there's many kind of chapters of what, I think, overnight success, all these things. It's the things that added up to that, at a young age, 18, I had high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and I was obese and asthmatic. So I had a pretty rough road in the beginning, very poor self-confidence. But I think a big part of my success came from a humble nature and a willingness to open my mind and learn, where I noticed a lot of my peers wanted to criticize and ridicule people who were, quote, doing better than them, right? And for whatever reason, I wanted to connect with those people and compliment them and learn from them. And so I started studying. I have the rock bottom story, like most people, where I didn't have purpose. All my purpose and obsessions were channeled in we'll call it the disorder liability column in my life. I found alcohol, and that seemed to take care of a lot of my problems in the beginning, and then it caused all of them. And so I had to pull out of I was also diagnosed dyslexic at a young age. And so I'm on a grant to a college to go drink with my buddies, and no purpose caused a pretty crummy situation where I totaled my car. I drove drunk and DUI and the whole story. And so I had to pull out of college. And I had this really, you talk about thinking, and I don't know what your viewers are with faith and spiritual nature, but I feel like it was God kind of talking to me that you get to study what you want to now. I always had a tough time with school. And so the best first investment I've made was Audible. I learn very well through audio. Having dyslexia, my reading comprehension is not very good. So I started buying books, and I landed on Bob Proctor's material and started reading his books. And one thing he said, I was given everything to somebody else in my life that I didn't know at the time, didn't really have my back. And so she wanted a house. We got a house. I go to work. I'm a electrical contractor driving 30 minutes or 40 minutes from where I live every day. And I hated it. I was not very fulfilled. And the plant that we worked in was so dangerous. We had to work in twos. We had to have partners. And every partner I had happened to be obese or overweight at that time. And just through osmosis, I'm giving them little tips and they're dropping 45, 50 pounds. And I had a few guys there that I kind of coached or mentored. And I think a lot of those contractor buddies took notice. And our company, we were contracting through ADM, and they're like, Kenny, our company's not doing so hot. Why don't you take the layoff and go chase your dreams? And though I wouldn't recommend that approach, that's exactly what I did. But here's the words from Bob. He said, whether you know it or not, you're trading your life for what you've chosen to do. And I remember hearing that, getting out of my car. I turned my car into like a mobile, schoolhouse, and I'd get to work and I'm getting dripped on by hot, whatever it is. It could be acid, and I'm like, this really is not very fulfilling. And I wasn't given to myself. I was denying things in myself with all the different pursuits for money, career. I did volunteer firefighting. None of it was as fulfilling as, kind of like you said, Kara, coaching, helping people to unfold those things that are inside their heart to make them real. And those contractor buddies of mine, that we're name calling each other and goofing off, and how construction workers are with their foul mouths, and they were angels in my life, and they banded together and they said, Kenny, you're not cut out for this work. Like, you can do more. And so I listened to that, and one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life, I'm like, how do I pay for my mortgage and my, and really helped a lot of people. So I don't know. Did that answer the question?
It did, but it just opened so many more questions. This is really exciting. So you had people who did have your back. You had the person who's closest to you who didn't have your back, but you had all these other people who did have your back, and they're telling you, go do this thing that doesn't feel right. Get out, go do it. Whew.
Yeah.
Wow. And so
that was like 7 years ago. Yeah.
That was 7 years ago?
Yeah.
And okay, so for 7 years, you have been coaching people on helping them get into great physical condition.
Yeah. Yeah. And mental health. Yeah, too. I think 90% of it is mental, like, our thoughts, learning. And that's what that Bob Proctor coaching program taught me. It was just the things that the school system misses, like things we can learn about ourselves. That's all it was. My goals, my dreams, my ambitions, and to channel that and start taking action on it. And I was met with opportunity, and I think that's one of the big problems today is people are wishing instead of wanting. And when the time shows up, we get signs in our life to like actually move. And that was one of my big signs, is everybody's like supporting. I thought I'd get opposition. I've got a business uncle who started a business in California and sold it, and he made millions, and very successful guy. But his story was totally different than mine. His was all, I love it when people tell me I can't do something and I'm going to show them. There was none of that. None of that in my experience. It was all people like, well, yeah, Kenny, I think if you can, you should, and why don't you? And I'm like, holy crap, this is, and so that was interesting for sure.
How cool for you, honestly, that you figured this out at such a young age. Really, I'm. There are a lot of people that never figure it out. I think most never do, and a lot of people don't figure it out until it's so late that it's really hard for them. A lot harder than it would be if they started in their 20s, 30s, 40s. You start getting to 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it's an old dog, new trick kind of thing.
Yeah. We got to unlearn more things than we have to learn, right? Well, and I think that's it. It's like I always had like a humble nature. I always came with the approach. Well, and with dyslexia, maybe that was just a learned behavior. Is I always felt like I wasn't up to par with my intellect or my comprehension. I was always a slow learner, and so having that patience to like get it and then go, I think I owe it all to my coaching, my education, the real education. I don't mean to poo-poo the standard education system, but that was not where I got. I mean, I got some social stuff, but I think self-development, like really seeking with your soul. I always use pain for my personal development. Whatever I feel like I'm struggling with, there's a good book for that. There's a, and like I met every client that works with me has to leap. It's that leap of faith. Bob talks about the terror barrier, and we're all met with the terror barrier. And it's like, okay, this program is like $8,000 when I don't have it. I didn't let that stop me though. I'm calling grandma, you know, hey grandma, and getting some help and some support. So I think we all have power bases, no matter how small. And it's like leveraging that and finding those people who are doing better than us that we can connect to. Doesn't mean they are better than us. It means that they do things better. They've got some roadmaps that we can participate in to get the similar results. So that's what
Very,
I believe.
I am 100% with you. For me, it was Tony Robbins,
Tony
and
Robbins.
it was his 30-day personal power program back in 1990. And it was $300 for these cassettes in 1990. And I didn't have $300, and I had just left my ex-husband, and he purchased them. So I was able to go back to our house, which I did not want to be there, and learn and then go home and do all the exercises. And I mean, it was an absolute, my life was headed in this trajectory, and it's just tiny. It's just habits. It's just tiny little things. And the trajectory changes. And oh my gosh, it's amazing.
I, that's interesting you say that. I've got it's kind of like a public service announcement. I feel people who are obese and struggling, or people who just feel kind of stuck. I always say, I think what I've learned in my coaching over 7 years, one of the biggest problems people have is they're overestimating what it takes to succeed. And I hope, my hope for that statement is that that kind of liberates people. What are your thoughts on that?
You're right. It's a lot. I don't want to make it sound like, 3 easy payments of
Yeah,
$29.95 and your life is going to be perfect. It's
yeah,
work. It's constant.
yeah,
It's constant. I am not through growing. I am not through learning in it, and it will never change.
no, yeah,
However, it's success is incredibly boring,
yeah,
right? I mean, it's
yeah,
you get up and you do the same boring things every single day. You have a morning routine, you do your same thing, and you get these results. And so it's not complicated, it's simple, but it takes work.
yeah. And I think success is a language. I think everybody, when you distill it down, is kind of saying the same thing. And I'm glad you say that, because that's one of Bob's primary things is success is simple, but it's not easy. That difference between simple and easy, it's like you say, some of the nuance, yeah, you could argue is complex, but when you break it down and distill everything down, it's pretty fundamental. And I agree, boring. I, it's amazing how much we, I think, are kind of on the same wavelength, Kara. I'm glad I'm on here.
I am too. I feel like we could do this for hours. This it
Yeah.
just well, and the whole Audible addiction. I would say
Yeah.
I am right there. Hi, my name is Kara. I'm
Okay.
addicted, and that is I got that from Zig Ziglar, who used to no, I think it was yeah, it was either Brian Tracy or Zig Ziglar who said it's make your car a university on wheels, and I took that to heart. I it hours and I'm a realtor. I'm on the road a lot, and so I am taking in continuously what you guys. If you squeeze a lemon, you get lemonade. You get lemon juice out of it. And so what you're putting in, whether you realize it or not, if you're right now, we just finished our election at the time that we're recording this, and if you're watching the news and you're obsessing over this, and if your candidate isn't the one that won, and you're obsessing over that, and you're guys, you're it's terrible when you get squeezed. All that's what's going to come out of you. So, what could you be listening to or thinking about that would help you get past it if you're upset? Those kind of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Directing that thought energy, and being mindful of that, I think is so important. I've got to protect myself. And it's like, that's one of the things that I tell my clients. They sometimes they don't see, obviously they don't see the big version of me that struggled. And I've got to remind them, I've been there. I know what it's like. And it's not until you realize that you can direct your thoughts, you can actually channel them in a positive direction. They think I've got all this willpower. I don't. You put me in a room full of junk food, I'm going to probably show you how to party, But I have habits that I've implemented over time. I've used that willpower to build habits that create impact. And what we want that impact to do is sell us on the idea and to allow us to get emotionally involved in like, wow, there's really something to have forming habits. So that way it doesn't tax my willpower all the time. And I think that's where people are struggling today is they just, Bob used to say ignorance is the cause of all of our problems, just not knowing, not being aware. And so I think us as coaches, that's kind of our job, is to help people just shift their perception a little bit, and we don't have to try harder always. Sometimes it's the way we're looking at things, at least that's what I believe.
It's usually the way we're looking at things. I mean, you really, truly do. I had a man on that I recorded a podcast with yesterday, and it hasn't come out yet. And he was talking about 20 years ago, him and three other guys, so a total of four guys, did a rap album. And he said somebody reminded him of it. He went back and he listened to it. And he said two of the guys were talking about living on the streets and this horrible stuff. And two of the guys were talking about wonderful stuff. And 20 years later, that's their reality.
Wow. That's a powerful story. How many guys? Three?
Four guys total.
Four.
Yeah.
So kind of half and half?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, like I grew up in severe poverty. I understand. I really do. And I've climbed really hard to get out of that. And I worked really, really hard and found out a lot of times that you didn't have to work as hard as you thought you did. But it kept me out of trouble. So I do understand that somebody who may be watching this or hearing this doesn't get it. They look at someone like yourself or they look at myself, and like you said, they don't see the struggle. They don't see everything that went behind. They just see the end result. And that's where you get that whole overnight success.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And I think Bob's onto something too. He talks a lot, and sorry to reference my mentor all the time, but it's like, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for me having that humble nature to say, I don't have this figured out. Like, help me, help. And receiving the help, there was days I was terrified to get on the call because I dropped the ball. I didn't apply myself. I didn't do some of those things I said I was going to do. But you know what? I showed up. And then on those calls, yes, it's hard to sit down in that chair, but it becomes the easiest, best thing for you because you get to vent. I have almost every coaching call I have where somebody's not where they want to be or they're kind of struggling. It's like, okay, let's get that out. I believe that suppression leads to depression. And I think a lot of us, we didn't even write that program. We inherited it. It's learned behavior. Suppress, don't cry, don't talk about your feelings, and then we hold everything in and bottle it up. And I've got a lot of clients where that's their biggest struggle is they're making mountains out of molehills, and when you have that professional you can talk to vent and the polar opposite of suppression is expression. And so giving them the opportunity to express themselves, it's like, what else is bugging you? What else? Okay, what else? And giving them that time to let it all out and write it all down on a page. It's no longer causing so much turmoil because it's down on a page. It's not, when we have things held in our mind that we're suppressing, they turn into these big mental monsters that have depth and dimension to them. And when we write it down on a page, we can now look down at our problems. So I think that's really important.
It is foundationally important. It is. And I'm embarrassed to admit this as a coach openly and honestly on a podcast, but I used to believe, because I did have such a terrible childhood, that you just leave that stuff back there. It's just, if it's not bugging you, you just leave it back there. Well, I found out the hard way that it is not gone. You keep it in your body. It will come out. You have to deal with it, guys. And I mean that in the nicest way I can say it. You have to deal with it. You have to face the trauma that's in your body still, and you've got to release it. It is imperative. The more you stuff down into that cave, the worse your life is going to be, and you won't understand why.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, and if I can tell more about that on that subject, like some of my struggles, I mean, I think when my mom was pregnant with me, I was in her stomach when she was doing aerobics courses. Like my mom was an aerobics instructor, and she has thoughts that's why he's so into fitness and all this. But my own mother said, "Oh, Kenny, you don't want to do that. There's no money in it." Right? Any aspiration I had towards fitness or health, it kind of got squashed. And I was, you know, and I'm never the type of person who ever wants to claim a victim. And I think that's a part of the work that I do with health and fitness is most diets promote victim mentality, right? Cut, quit, restrict, limit, portion, count, can't, try, cheat, right? That all help form an industry that has a 95% failure rate. And so instead of becoming a victim to my mom and hating my mom, like I had to do some work on that, and I guess there was some of that, like prove mom wrong type thing. And I think we all kid ourselves, and it's like, how silly is it if it works? And we've had conversations about it, and she feels terrible about it that I have to share that story. But I think I'd be doing people a disservice if I didn't share that I had that, a lot of people in our lives that are ones that love us the most sometimes don't believe in us, or they don't support us the way that we need to thrive. And that's why I really recommend anybody who's getting started in business or some new side hustle they want to start is like forming that power base, connecting. There's people I didn't know that have helped me more than people I do know. And so I think that's why it's so important to network and get out there and meet new friends. We can always meet new friends, but they don't teach us how in school. We kind of inherit our friends just from circumstance. And I think that's why things like we're doing right here is so valuable. Because I think I'm meeting a pretty incredible person today, Kara. What you're doing is amazing. And I'm so blessed to be on here.
Man, I feel the exact same way about you. I genuinely do. It's like you're a brother from another mother.
That's right.
And it's good. And it's good. Okay, so I want to just ask you to maybe think about it a little bit different with your mom, because here's the way I kind of see it.
Got my notes.
Is when you have a dream and you want to do something, be very, very careful who you share it with, guys. Be very careful. Do not tell your family necessarily, depending on who your family is. It's very rare that you have a family that you can tell, because what happens is they see you doing something that's out of their comfort zone and it scares them. Have you heard how they catch crabs?
Yeah, the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see where you're going.
Yeah. I mean, the crab, all the food's gone, and one of the crabs says, okay, I'm going to leave. The other crabs will literally break their limbs to bring them back down there with them. It's not because they don't like that crab. It's because they're scared. Don't leave. You're scared. I'm scared that you're leaving. And so I think a lot of times well-meaning people, the people that you love the very, very most, you have to show them, not tell them. Because if you show them, they can't argue with it. And then they're like, oh, I always knew you could do it. But if you tell them, I'm going to do this, they'll give you every reason that you can't, or you shouldn't, or you wouldn't. And I don't care how powerful you think you are. When you have people that you care about telling you, don't, you can't, and telling you all this negative stuff, it does have an impact.
Oh, 100%. Thank you for that, Kara. I'm starring that. Boy, you're giving to me here. I appreciate this.
Right back at you. Okay. So tell me a little bit. You started the business, and did it take off right away? What was that like?
It was interesting. And that's so basically it was word of mouth. So I'm in Springfield, Illinois, capital city. And I was driving to Decatur, which is about 45 minutes away. And so I got to know, with networking and just working around people, I had a pretty strong connection in Decatur. And so most of my clients came from that factory that I worked at. I've got buddies who are like, yeah, Kenny, like, let me help you get started, and one of my guys, Brad, I mean, and that's kind of the coolest thing is I worked with Brad 6 years ago, and he was 315 pounds, and he now resides around 185 to 190 with 15% body fat today. And so that's the type of work that when I started my business, that I want to do is teach people habits and how to form a lifestyle. So that way, none of their favorite foods go anywhere. It's just putting everything in its place in order. Um, Bob talks a lot about order. He believes it was the first law set in heaven. And I like that. I don't know where that came from, but I think a lot of our biggest problems today is disorder. So I don't know why I'm going there, but basically it started from being it, like you said, showing people. Don't tell them, show them. And they saw how I came to work and how dedicated I was to what I talk about, whole foods. I mean, I had a meal system bag that had everything organized. I had two side pouches. One was mixed raw nuts from Aldi. I'm a huge Aldi fan. If you guys have Aldi's in your area, fantastic grocery store. They have amazing quality food for cheap prices. Um, and then my other compartment had apples and oranges. And then in the middle, about every 2 hours, we took a break, and I'm eating, rice, beans, and broccoli. And my guys at work are looking at me like, how do you do that, man? How do you do that? I'm like, when you eat, and this is my belief, when you eat more of what God put here, there's a natural wisdom to that. Like, I don't have to figure out all the little details. It's like when you start to eat food that's wrapped in fiber the way it was designed to be, and you get away from all that processed stuff, or you put it in its place. On the weekends, I have some fun, and I scratch the itch. If I wanted whatever it was, whatever I was craving, I go and have that because I worked so hard during the week. And all of my peers saw that, and they wanted to participate in the best way they can. And so I would say that's probably the best way it got started, was just word of mouth. And then Brad's getting success. So and so says, "Oh my gosh, Brad!" And so showing people. I really like how you said that, Kara. Show them, don't tell them. That's exactly how I got started, I guess, and I didn't even realize it until saying it now. So yeah, to your wisdom there, that's so true, 100%.
That is so cool, and that's the best kind of a business to have too, because you're getting to work with people that you want to work with. You're attracting everyone who comes into your life. You attract them, whether you want to believe that or not, and it's just is the way it is. So you mentioned an awful lot of stuff there that made me think of the documentary Game Changers. Have you seen that?
I have, love
Are,
that.
so
100%.
are you a vegetarian?
Plant powered. It's complicated. So one of my big chapters in reversing my health conditions was realizing that, basically, and that's something I do in my orientations, getting clients started, is we talk about nutritional truth. And when you look at dairy and what it was designed to do, in truth, that opens a lot of doors for opportunity with our actions and non-actions, right? So kind of pushing dairy out of my diet, for the first time in my life, my six pack, I'll just be honest, a big driver for me early on was to attract a more desirable partner in my life. Um, Somebody who really fills my cup up. And of course, you got romance and attraction. And I'm like, man, the more I can fill my cup up, the better I can look and feel, the better quality partner I'm probably going to connect with. And so for the first time in my life, when I got away from the standard American diet, was when all of a sudden, all those goals I had of looking like the guys in the magazine started to become realized. I started to carve up. I started to see ab muscles. And for the first time in my life, I could consider myself buff and ripped, it was a big goal. And it was hiding behind dairy. I'll just tell you. And so, and then at that partner that I had in that time, she went vegan. And just being honest, I grew up in a small town near here, small town, small mind. where I literally saying to her, I'm not going to raise a child vegan, all these things, all this indoctrination. And she said, Kenny, you look pretty healthy. Most people say you've made a lot of progress, but you still struggle with your blood pressure. Every time you go to the doctor, you've got fear that they're going to try to medicate you and all this. And I was on a low dose lisinopril, and she goes, you're doing kind of more bodybuilding style diet, chicken, rice, and broccoli. Like now you're eating beans, rice, and broccoli, And I'm like, okay, you put it like that. How about this? How about I give it a try? I tried it for a week, Kara, and my blood pressure went low for the first time in my life. Low. I got to get off my blood pressure medication. My asthma doctor used to berate my mother when I missed doses on my inhaler, literally would remove me from the room so he could yell at my mother. And he said he's got asthma so bad he's going to be on these drugs the rest of his life. That doctor was wrong. Because I was willing. And then the Hyde heart. That's all you hear with the Hydes in our family. Environment is more important than heredity. And I had to learn that lesson through trial and error and actually being willing to do whatever it takes. Most people's out is take the drugs, right? Listen to your doctor. And though I do think that's important with certain diagnosis, I actually got to get off medication because I was more focused on the truth. There's Kenny Hyde's truth, there's Kara's truth, but then there's the truth right in the middle. And it was something I had to do personally. There's a lot of people who can eat, animal products and be okay and do fine. And I wasn't one of them. And then you start getting into blood type dieting and things like that. And I know some people say, well, it's lost its credibility. It worked for me.
Are you A positive?
What's that?
Are you A positive?
I'm an A plus. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Me too. Okay. And I'm vegan as well.
Okay. So I was vegan for 6 years. I will tell you, I still do. I got back on eggs. I do egg whites. The egg yellows have a lot of cholesterol in them that my body probably doesn't do well with. So I do some eggs. But that's about it. Eat a lot of tofu, beans, legumes, tempeh, edamame. There's a lot of good protein sources that also bring a lot of calcium to the party too. So it's a myth that you have to eat meat to be healthy or animal products to be healthy. It's just not true. And then, there's also some ethics that go along with that, and karmic debt that you can go into. But mostly it was about me, and the results didn't lie. So I hope that answers that question.
Thoroughly. I can't tell you how much I appreciate how authentic you are, Kenny, how real you are, and how passionate you are. Passionate enough to just put everything personally out there for the whole world to attack, because they're going to go attack. But somebody's going to hear it and say, oh, meditation also, for those of you with high blood pressure issues, they've done study after study after study. 15 to 20 minutes of meditation for 8 weeks got everyone off of their medication.
It's cured more ills than a truckload of pills, and it's been around for a lot longer than those pharmaceuticals have.
So you're into meditation too.
But the problem is you've got to sit down and do nothing with no guarantees. And that's the hardest thing for most people, is they're like, well, the science, the data, and it's like, you got to give this a shot. You got to be, and I think too, being sold, that's what our job as mentors or coaches is to really sell people on the idea. What do you have to lose except your time, a little bit of time? I'll tell you from my experience with meditation, it can be agonizing, for somebody who's just getting started. But I think that's the part of the work, that's part of the sacrifice that's required to learn to quiet your mind, 100%. That's my belief on that. But yeah, meditation's huge.
It is such a big deal. It is so important. And especially in our world today with social media and our cell phones and everything just screaming and wanting our attention, we have to be so careful about what we allow, what we've got to have on blinders and just focus and go. So if someone wanted to call you and talk to you about like, hey, I'm yeah, both extremes. I'm 500 pounds and I'm in decent shape, but my blood pressure is higher or some other health issue is going on. What does it look like? What is getting into coaching with you look like?
Okay, so it all starts with a free consultation. So just connecting with me via social media or my phone number. I give out my phone number because I want people to be able to contact me. Um, so Kenny Hyde on Facebook, TikTok, Kenny Hyde Coaching, Instagram, Kenny Hyde Coaching. You can find me on the social media and just reach out to me and we'll set up your free consultation. And that's where we dive deep on some of the struggles that you have. And then from there, you can sign up on my website. It's pretty simple. You just go to kennyhyde.com and sign up. That runs you through a series of questions that you fill out really thoroughly. So that builds out your profile, and then you just put your card on file. And once you get that sign up done, you get the program, which is your habit system. That's what I teach. It's 4 key points that we just need to weave into your lifestyle. None of it's going to give you a brain hernia. It's really simple, boring stuff, right? And from there we do orientation, and that takes about an hour. We can do it over the phone, in person if you're in network, or via Zoom is usually how I do that. And that's where we talk about the foundational stuff, nutritional truth. We talk about whole foods. We talk about the 80-20 rule. Learning to use the scale, which I think is a big 90% of the game's mental, and so shifting your perception, I think, is really important. And that's what I sit down and help you to do. So you see how the habit system works and how everything connects together. Most people's biggest problem, mine included, when I was working with Bob, he said, Kenny, your way isn't working. He says, my way does, right? And so if you're into taking advice from somebody who's been there, done that, that's exactly what I do. And I'm there to meet you as a person, as an individual, and help tailor this habit system to fit into your unique lifestyle. And from there, we do weekly check-ins. So you get weekly support every week. We're going to carve out a time slot in your busy schedule to talk about the most important person, you. And I think that's where most people, I always say, number one value is information. We don't know what we don't know. And that's a huge problem. And so that's where I start. I want people to get an unparalleled education on health and wellness and even mental health. And the second piece is the accountability factor. That's our insurance policy on success. And so every week you have that check-in, and you're also going to have a weight loss target. And then my goal, my bullseye for everyone, is the polar opposite of motivation. I think motivation is the wrong target. It's external, it's fleeting. It's like relying on the weather. I'm wanting to help you cultivate inspiration, which is inside out. It's a belief from within that you can. The only way you can fail is if you quit. Okay, so just don't quit. And I have a lot of ways that people can do that. So I hope that gives a good glimpse as to what it looks like. All you need is a dedicated notebook when we talk. So.
Okay, that sounds beautiful, and I can tell you guys, it's you may be having all kinds of different feelings about the thought of submitting to a coach. I am a coach, and I'm around a lot of coaches, and let me tell you, if this was an issue for me, I could submit to you, Kenny, with no doubt, with no questions. I would do what you asked me to do, and that's what I'm asking you guys to do. If you do get with a coach, whether it's Kenny or anybody else, try it. I would say that is one of the biggest secrets to my success is if someone I respect who has actually done something says, try this, I will try it. Open-mindedly, I will try it. Occasionally it's not the thing, but if it is the thing, then you turn it into a habit. So how do you help people have better habits?
That's a good, really good question. The way I've been trained to talk habits, I'm kind of a fundamentalist at my core. I think the mark of a really intelligent person, I don't believe is to make things more complex. I think it should be to simplify, right? And really, when it comes to habit, there's only two parts. We have time-spaced repetition and we have impact. And this operates on two polarities. That's something that's really important to understand. Um, Bad habits are almost easier to form than the good ones, right? And it's that relationship between repetition and impact. When we smoke a cigarette, in that current moment, that might make you feel better, right? But then afterwards, you're left feeling maybe a little bit down, a little bit depressed. And it's just a band-aid, you know? The success cycle is short-term pain, long-term pleasure. The doom cycle is short-term pleasure, long-term pain. And I think the biggest part to that is getting people to hop out of the doom cycle into the success cycle, where we do the tough thing first. I think that's one of the common denominators of successful people is they get all the challenging stuff out of the way, and then they're left with bliss and confidence and a little bit of you feel inspired when you're doing things that not doing things that makes you feel good. You're doing things that makes you feel good about being you. I think that's the difference, and so when you can just look at your habits, look at what you're doing, if there's room in growth to improve your diet, don't see it as more things you have to do, see it as opportunity that you can do a little bit better today. And we just want to stack that. And so I think that's really the key to forming habits is it's an information assisted process. If I was working with you, Kara, I'm sure you would help to clear my mind. And it's like, let's think this way, let's put our thoughts in forward gear, instead of wasting time thinking about how we can't or how it's hard or how it's, let's put it in forward gear. And so that, I hope that kind of answers the question. Repetitions cause impact, good or bad. And if you want to start improving and seeing the number on the scale change, there's little simple things in your day that you can just take part in and engage in to realize that immediate impact. You'll immediately start feeling better. So I hope that answers that question.
It's beautiful. So, Atomic Habits, it sounds like you have it stacking. Okay.
Top shelf. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best books out there, period. So that brings me to a question. What books and podcasts have helped you over the years?
I've got most of them. It's funny, come from Bob. I think one of my top shelves for sure is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. That's changed my life. It's really a beautifully written. It's old speak. It's got an old title that, isn't the greatest, but if you can see the truth in what's in there, it's really a book on the law of attraction. It's being mindful of where our thoughts are going and what we think we actually create in our life. If we think doom and gloom, we're kind of magnetizing ourselves to that end. And if we can shift, I think the biggest part is mental, and so finding those books that are loaded up with gold bricks, it's just loaded with it. And it's only an hour read. That's another thing I like. Short books to me are the way to go. And I read them over and over and over again. There's times I'll be on one book for 3 months and I'm just reading it over and over and over again. So I know that defies logic to some people, but that's repetition is
the
how
mother of skill. Yeah, it is.
It's a part of habit forming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's powerful. The Scrolls. What book was that? Og Mandino.
The greatest salesman in the world.
The greatest salesman in the world. I heard a podcast with Brian Buffini did a podcast with Matthew McConaughey.
Green Lights. That's a good book.
It's a great book. And when he did the interview with him, Matthew told the story about how he was doing the scrolls, and you have to read them 3 times a day and all this stuff. And he was like an hour and a half away and realized he didn't have his book. He drove back to get it so he could do what he was supposed. Like, that's how important this stuff is, guys, that their success leaves clues. And every decision you make, every single time you make a decision, it's a cause set in motion. And so just pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to how you react. This is so much fun. What question have I not asked you that I should have?
I'm pretty proud of one. I gotta toot my own horn here. I wish the number was bigger. I think I heard you. I believe it was you talked about Ed Milet a little bit. He talks about blissful dissatisfaction, and boy, I've been engaging in that, right? And pretty soon it can turn into miserable dissatisfaction, and that's not no good. But I think we're encroaching our 7,000 pound down mark with the work that I've done. So 7,000. I've worked with hundreds of people, thousands of pounds down, and the goal is for it to be repeatable, sustainable. And so you touch base with me once and your life has changed. I mean, that's the goal. I'm not here to be the Kenny Hyde show. I'm here to help you guys tailor a habit system that works for your life and your unique preferences and opinions. And I want to work with that. A lot of people have many gifts, that they see as weakness. It's like ADD, ADHD. It's like, let's get all that energy moving in the right direction. It's like, let's stop looking at it as we've got a disability or a problem. I've studied dyslexia because I am one, and you learn that it's actually a gift. There's a lot of positive things to take from that really contributes to society. So that would be the question: is how many pounds down, how much I've helped. But it's kind of irrelevant because that's why I'm here, and I found my passion. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. And I know timing is a thing. Like, the holidays are coming, but it's a good time. If I could say anything, a lot of people want to wait and not do it because the holidays are coming. But that's like the proving grounds. I see that as the perfect time to start changing your habits, because I don't say cut, quit, restrict. You can go and have Christmas dinner and eat exactly what you want to have. But during the week, we're going to be a little bit more disciplined, and we're going to earn our vices. I believe in earning vices. And so get some pounds down first, and then you're going to build a healthier relationship with food in the process. A lot of people sit down at a dinner and they're like, oh, I know I shouldn't, but it's like this: do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it. It's like, I want you guys to have order in your mind and know that it's okay to engage in some lavish food, but we got to keep it in a smaller area if we want to be successful, if we want to be in our ideal weight. So I hope that finds people well.
You know what? I'm right there with you, and I want to just jump onto that bandwagon, because, guys, seriously, that you have an enemy inside of you, and it is trying to convince you that waiting is a better idea. And if you go into, I'm just going to be real blunt, and it's really hard. Because as you get older in life, the people that you love and they have not made good choices, it's really hard. It's hard. If you're not making good choices, you are a burden on your family. Please, if anyone loves you, love yourself enough to give Kenny a call and just see what happens. Like,
you got nothing to lose. It's free, and we're giving 15% off to every person that comes from this podcast that we're doing here. So 15% off, and price depends on what your goals and needs are, and that's what we talk about on that call. So I'm willing to work with everybody. I work with your budget if we need to. So I'm here to help you, whatever that may be. So you've got nothing to lose to at least set up some time to talk with me to see if it'd be a good fit for you.
Well, very cool, Kenny. I appreciate it so much. So my last question always is, this is Think Your Way to an Epic Life. So what tips do you have for our folks to help them think their way to their own epic life?
I think a lot of people confuse thinking with mental activity. A lot of our, what we would call thoughts, are coming from our subconscious, past traumas, past events that we've gone through. And so learning to recognize the difference of those dialogues. When your subconscious mind is throwing up a suggestion that you could label negative, real genuine thought comes from our heart. I think it comes from whatever you believe. If you believe in a higher power, you believe in the universe, you believe in God, we can, with meditation, learn to quiet that mental activity that's just being tossed up as little layups that we can just, it's easy to listen to that. Listen to your heart. Listen to that pain. Listen to things you're suppressing. If there's things inside of you that you want to unfold, but you're afraid to tell anybody, you're afraid, think of your most important next step. Think of one thing you could do today to honor that thing that's been put there. I don't think it's an accident that you have a desire to do better. And just start to distinguish the difference between what your heart is telling you and that mental activity that's coming from social media or the news or whatever else. I think learning to distinguish the two is what's going to help you unfold your epic life. So that would be my answer to that question. 100%.
All right. All right. We appreciate you so very much. You dropped a ton of very valuable information today, and you'll be a friend of Think Your Way to an Epic Life
Thank you so
forever.
much, Kara. And it was such a pleasure being on. I'm flattered to be here, and I'm just a guy who's happened. That's about the only thing I do well is I'm a good coach, and I've been there and I've done that, and that's what I'm here to do, is just to help people unfold the best version of themselves. So it's been a blessing. Thank you so much for the time, Kara. I appreciate you.
It is my honor. Thank you.